Hello, fantastic Blair sixth graders. I today started to try to teach you how to do an active reading log. And it turned out that my explanation was not complete enough for some people. And I could only do a little bit at a time and show a few people at a time. So I'm going to make a video right now of what it looks like to make an active reading log entry. Now I apologize because the desk camera or the camera I'm using will change its focus every once in a while. So I apologize ahead. See, there it goes. I apologize for any confusion that gives you, but you should be able to see my paper here and what I write. So when you do an active reading log entry, you're going to use a whole paper in your science notebook. And you're going to divide it into 4 sections. So I like to fold my paper, and that gives me a nice straight line. Now I'm going to do mine in marker so that you can see it, but you of course can do yours in pencil, maybe pen. I'm going to write some information, right up here at the top. So I'm going to start my line just a little bit lower. I'm going to divide it in half. Now I'm going to divide it in half again so that I have 1, 2, 3, 4 sections. This first section, the top left section, that is where I'm going to put 3 main ideas. The section on the top right is going to be 2 helpful quotes. The section in the bottom left is going to be something that you learned. Depending on what it is that you're reading or watching or whatever, this might be 3 or 4 or 5 things, or it might just be 1 or 2 things. And the last thing are going to be questions that you have. Okay. Oops, it's possible I just have the autofocus setting, in which case it will stop doing that all the time. Woo! Well, we'll see. Anyway, the text that we are doing this first assignment on is Ada Twist Scientist. So here at the very top, I'm going to write the title, Ada Twist Scientist. So if it's a video, you write the name of the video. If it's a podcast, you write the name of that podcast episode. And then underneath, you're going to write the author. Now, forgive me, I have to cheat and look it up. The author is Andrea Beatty. So it's by Andrea Beatty. So up here, this way when I come back later and look at all of this, I know what it's from. I've got my title and I have the author. If it's a video or a podcast, you say, what's the channel, or who's talking in the podcast that you're listening to. So after I have this set up, then I'm going to go read. Then I'm actually going to go and do my reading. So you know that I have Ada Twist Scientist available both as slides, so you can read it, or I have it available as a video, and it's me reading the video. And I'm going to give you one example of each of these sections, and then that will give you a place where you can kind of start. So I'm going to use a different color for what I'm writing in. This is then, so it's the title, the author, 3 main ideas, 2 helpful quotes, I learned, and questions. So 3 main ideas. One main idea that some students in my classes have already been saying, some of you have been saying that anyone can be a scientist. Anyone can be a scientist. And you can write that down for one of your main ideas for this book, Ada Twist Scientist. But if you write this one down, I do want you to come up with 3, so come up with 2 more on your own. But that's the main idea of the book. You don't have to be, an educated person with a PhD who is working in a laboratory. Anyone can be a scientist. 2 helpful quotes. Oh, you guys were coming up with some wonderful ones in class. But one of the quotes that I heard a couple times was when she asks why, what, and when, because a scientist asks questions. So that might be one quote you put down. But again, Find at least one more that is a helpful quote that illustrates to you how she is a scientist or what she is telling us about being a scientist. Something that you learned, you can put a lot of different things here. One thing I'm going to put is science can be messy, because sometimes it is. Science can be messy, and then you can come up with maybe a couple more things on your own. Questions that you have. I know some of you were saying, Ms. Kelly, how can we have a question about a picture book? Well, I've got a question. What was the source of the stink? Because if you pay really close attention, this question is answered in the book. But this is a question that you might have. Did you figure it out? Do you know what the source of the stink was? And then any other questions that you might have. And then when you do an active reading log, move it down so you can see what I wrote. Whenever you do an active reading log, not every time, but sometimes I'm going to ask you to take a picture of what you wrote and submit it on Canvas. And that just helps me see if, especially if a lot of people have the same questions, what I can do. But it also, it helps me keep track of, some of the really important information that you're catching, and maybe some quotes that we can share as a class that will help other people. So I hope that helped, and I cannot wait to see your active reading logs.